Hey there and welcome back to another Disney video. And recently, we got some pretty major announcements regarding the future of both Pixar and Walt Disney Animation. And that was the announcement that we're seemingly returning to another age of sequels, with Toy Story 5, Frozen 3, and Zootopia 2 all confirmed to be in development at this stage. And yeah, I really wasn't expecting all of this, to be honest. I mean, I figured at some point that another Zootopia movie would come along, but I certainly thought Toy Story had been finished up completely, and that Frozen would have a lot longer time to breathe before any other installment might be released. So, seems like Mickey Mouse is breaking the glass in case of emergency. And really, I'm not that surprised now that I've had time to dwell on it. The 2010s were a huge decade for Disney, and saw record-breaking box office numbers and Oscars galore. Whilst I feel like the films of the 2020s have maybe not been received quite so well, and on top of that, COVID's been COVIDing. After all, Strange World was a complete and utter flop, and the Pixar films of late, well, I don't think they're quite hitting the highs that the studio has come to expect. Simply put, Disney and Pixar had perhaps their biggest decade ever in the 2010s, in both critical and commercial response, and yet their first 3 years of the 2020s haven't been on that same level. So is it any wonder they want to try and bring back some of the old favourites? I mean, look at it this way. Toy Story 3 and Toy Story 4, both released in the 2010s, grossed over $1 billion. Frozen 1 and 2, both released in the 2010s, grossed over $1 billion, and in fact, they sit in second and third place on the list of highest grossing animated films of all time. That's nothing to sneeze at if you ask me. On top of that, the Toy Stories, they're sitting at number 6 and 7, while Zootopia is number 8. Also having grossed over $1 billion. And so, from a financial perspective, I do get it. I really get it. Why would you pass up on so much financial potential? Feels like such an obvious home run. I mean, there's realistically no chance that these films don't each smash over $1 billion. And honestly, judging by the trajectory that Frozen's taken, I wouldn't be surprised if Frozen 3 is able to challenge Disney's own record for the highest grossing animated film of all time. Lion King, they're coming for you. And then, yeah, Zootopia, that's also a pretty untapped franchise. They had their first film, which was a smash hit, and they had that Disney Plus show, which was very popular at the time, and then nothing. So it really has boundless potential to earn a lot of money for the studio. So I very much get why they're doing this. But that being said, I still find it a little bit troubling. They've had a few flops, and then suddenly they're in panic mode and they want to go back to the well. Beat the dead horse. And for me, Pixar's is the worst of the lot. Like, I think their films have been good, but clearly the studio has not been hitting the highs they're used to in the last couple of years. They had Turning Red, which was okay, Lightyear, which was bad, Luca and Soul, which were fun, but didn't really earn any money because of COVID, and then there was Onwards, which was which brings us right back to Toy Story 4, which was a massive triumph. So it feels like the studio is scrambling and panicking, trying to get a new massive hit from both a critical and commercial point of view. But the only problem is, I think eventually we're going to see diminishing returns for Toy Story. I mean, how long can they keep pushing the same stories, the same characters? They've hit us with what felt like a definitive end to it twice now. The Andy farewell and then the Woody Buzz farewell. But at what stage is enough enough? If they keep forcing them back together, and then they do more farewells, doesn't it cheapen 3 and 4 at some point? And then on the flip side, do you only have one set of toys appear? Woody and the Nomads or Buzz and Bonnie's toys? Is that what they're going to do? Because that also sounds like crap. And at the same time, I do think the quality of Pixar's overall writing has been on the decline. Even if you toss established IP out there, without a good script, it's dead in the water. It's going to eventually end up slowly tainting the brand the longer you go on. So far, Toy Story has had a golden run. And whilst I personally didn't like 4, I get it, many people did. After all, it has critical and audience scores above 90% and grossed over $1 billion. Must be doing something right. But yeah, very much feels like they're risking beating a dead horse by this point. But we'll have to wait and see. I mean, this isn't an ordinary franchise after all. 4 movies in, and still critically acclaimed, award-winning, and more lucrative than ever before. It's going to take a lot to kill Toy Story. And so, because of that, I think Pixar, with this film at least, is going to be fine. Disney, I'm kind of 50-50 on, because firstly, I think Zootopia 2 is likely going to be a smash hit and do very well, or at least it'll do well at the box office, because it already has that built-in audience. And after all, it's a bunch of cutesy talking animals. How could that not be a box office smash with that idea? So at minimum, we're going to see that Zootopia's sequel is going to be financially lucrative. And hell, the third Frozen film is going to be financially lucrative. It'll probably be the second, or the most lucrative film, in terms of animation at least, ever. Only a truly delusional person would dare suggest otherwise. Frozen especially has got to have one of the biggest built-in fan bases of any franchise ever. A fan base that just got renewed in 2019. Imagine all the little kids. They're still the right age for this. And there's going to be new ones too. And then there's a nostalgia factor for the older people that watched Frozen 1. It's going to explode. It's going to challenge for the record. But once again, I'm worried about the writing and the critical side of things. Because I'll be honest, much like Pixar, I feel like Disney is starting to decline in quality since their mid-2010s glory days. And now we're getting a couple more average releases. For every Encanto, it seems we have a Raya and a Strange World. And the film preceding all of those is Frozen 2. So it really does feel like the studio is being forced to go back to basics very quickly just to regain some momentum. And so ultimately, my major problem here is that I just don't think the writing can hold up. Zootopia, I think they can get away with. After all, the concept is very vague. Vague enough that you can do anything at all within the confines of Zootopia. They can take it in literally any direction. And for the most part, I think it can work. That's the beauty of having a setting that's a city filled with various different animals and environmental zones. Frozen, though, it's a lot more locked in. You need the ice and the snow. It's in the name. And our characters really felt like they'd hit their natural conclusions. Anna is Queen of Arendelle. And she'll marry what's-his-face, the big hunky blonde guy. And Elsa's doing whatever it was she was doing. Ice Spirit, something like that. And so considering, just like I said, the overall quality of Disney's writing seems to be on the decline, I'm fearful that this has the potential to be their Shrek the Third moment, where they make something that's just so much worse than the first two. And I mean, Frozen 2 was already far inferior to the first one. So I'm really not holding out too much hope for this, but yeah, I think it's just been written into a corner. Written to a natural end, and now they're going to be excavating the crypt, hoping for any scraps, any bones that remain, in order to try and form some sort of story from it. And so yeah, I get why it's happening, but it does have me very worried. And it also has me very curious. What is the 2020s going to be like for Disney and Pixar? Are they going to lose their top spot? I mean, DreamWorks and Sony, and Illumination, they're looking pretty good recently. I'm really curious to see how this plays out going forward. And so yeah, that's really all I have to say. So with all that being said, I'll just remind you that these were my opinions, and I'd like to hear yours. What do you think of the announcements? You hyped? Maybe not? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.